Alright, ladies and gentlemen, here is this week's edition of Video Game Reviews. And we're going back to the PlayStation 5 for this one as I cover Final Fantasy XVI. This, of course, is an action role-playing game that's part of the Final Fantasy series. And this particular game released in June of 2023. And originally released as a PlayStation 5 exclusive before releasing onto PC in September of last year. And the game takes place in the twin continents of Valisthea, which is divided between 6 nations who hold power through access to magical crystals and dominant humans who act as hosts for each nation's icon. The tensions between the nations escalate as a magical drought dubbed the Blight begins consuming the land. And then Clive Rosefield, who is the main character for this, and Guardian Using Murder Joshua, witnesses his kingdom being destroyed and becomes involved in a growing conflict between Valsthea's nations and a secret power driving the war. And like I said, this is an action role-playing game. And you have 2 difficulty settings at the beginning. There's a story mode difficulty, which basically offers you accessories to make combat easier, as well as strengthen the characters, as well as a normal mode. And then after completing the game, you get new options available, including New Game Plus, which carries over your player statistics and equipment into a new game, and then a harder Final Fantasy mode, which increases the overall difficulty and also changes the enemy placements. And then there's also an arcade mode in here, which grades players using a point system for combat, with harder all-time Maniac mode challenges within that. In those modes, Clive can upgrade his weapons, upgrade accessories in Final Fantasy mode, and challenge trials which place limits on Clive, such as only using 1 icon power in battle. Alright, so how this goes is that in his teenage years, Clive is serving as Joshua's bodyguard, having been named Bearer and blessed with some power from the Fire Akon Phoenix. They live with their parents, Duke Elwyn and Duchess Annabella, with Jill acting as their ward. The brothers accompany Elwyn with Cyril to accompany Joshua's powers, where they're ambushed by Sandbreak soldiers. And Elwyn's death then triggers Joshua's destructive awakening as the Phoenix, and Icon named Ifrit, I think that's emerges moments later and ends up killing the Phoenix, with Clive swearing revenge. Annabella, who ends up despising Clive's lack of blessing, betrays Rosaria to preserve her bloodline as Clive enslaved the Sandbreak's army. 13 years later, Clive is then sent behind enemy lines during a fight between the Dalmatian Republic and the Iron Kingdom to assassinate Letter's dominant, revealed to be an enslaved Jill. And then upon recognizing her, Clive deserts to free Jill, and the two are rescued by Sid, who then agrees to help Clive search for Ifrit's dominant. Tracking word of an unknown dominant, they fight Benedicta, from whom Clive takes power of her icon Garuda. And then, after Benedicta is defeated, she's attacked by bandits and transforms into a raging Garuda, which triggers Clive to transform into Ifrit and kill her. And while Clive briefly despairs of the fact that he is Ifrit and one who killed Joshua, Sid encourages him to keep searching for the truth behind his transformation. And then after Clive and Jill see the full oppression inflicted on bearers and their sympathizers in occupied Rosaria, they join Sid in the quest to destroy the nation's mother crystals, which are causing the Blight by draining Aether from the land. They infiltrate Sandbreak's capital. Both and its mother crystal are faced by a being called Ultima, who mortally wounds Sid before the mother crystal is destroyed. Ultima then attempts to possess Clive, and Joshua, who survived Ifrit's attack due to Phoenix's powers, stops and contains Ultima within himself. And Hugo, who had been in love with Benedicta, ends up being manipulated by Barnabas's agents into seeking revenge against Sid for her death. And then 5 years later, Clive, who's now using the title of Sid, destroys the Iron Kingdom's mother crystal with Jill, who takes revenge on her enslavers. With Sandbreak having occupied the crystal line dominion for its mother crystal, Annabella schemes to replace Dion as heir to the throne with Olivier, her son by Sandbreak's employer Sylvester. Hugo invades Rosaria to lure out Sid, prompting Clive to mutilate Hugo in a fight and reveal himself as Benedicta's killer. Desperate for revenge, Hugo transforms into a raging titan. Having gained full control of Ifrit, Clive then kills Hugo and destroys the Dalian Mother Crystal. Under Joshua's advice, Dion stages a coup against Annabelle, but in the process, Dion inadvertently kills Sylvester and is transformed into a raging Bahamut by Olivier, who is revealed to be a vessel for Ultima. Clive destroys the Dominion's Mother Crystal as he reunites with Joshua, helping him defeat Bahamut. Now aware of Ultima's machinations, Dion ends up killing Olivier, which causes an unhinged Annabella to kill herself in despair. Barnabas later confronts Clive and reveals Ultima's plan to shape Clive into my folks, a vessel for Ultima to end up inhabiting. After Jill gives him the power of her Econ Shiva, Clive manages to kill Barnabas and destroys Wallowan's Mother Crystal. Joshua's search into Fallon ruins. Research into Fallon ruins reveals that Ultima's people had seeded Valisthea with the Mother Crystals to siphon Aether from a resurrection spell after succumbing to an earlier blight. The Fallen and their human descendants were created to breed a vessel powerful enough to cast the spell. Clive, Joshua, and Dion assault Ultima's Sky Fortress of Origin, where Ultima's fragments merge to complete their plan. In the ensuing fight, Ultima kills Dion and rips his fragment out of Joshua, which mortally wounds him. Joshua then sacrifices himself to give Clive his Econ. After killing Ultima, Clive heals Joshua's wounds and destroys the final Mother Crystal of Origin to remove magic from Valisthea. And then a post-credits scene in Valisthea's future, where magic is considered a myth, shows a family living in peace and only a book credited to Joshua recording the game's events. And post-release downloadable content expansions, Echoes of the Fallen and Rising Tide, both expand the moats of water, which is a persecuted tribe associated with the icon Leviathan. And Echoes of the Fallen fragments from an artificial Mother Crystal created by the Fallen are distributed on the black market. Clive, Joshua, and Jill go to the Sage Spire, which is the source of the crystals. They discover the merchant Fabian is selling crystals taken from the Sage Spire. Clive and his party fight an artificial icon dubbed Omega and destroy the tower's Mother Crystal. In the Rising Tide, Clive, Jill, and Joshua travel to the land of Mysidia with Shula, who is the current leader of the Moats of Water. They then learn that the dominant of Leviathan, a baby called Walgus, who shares family with Shula, was forced to awaken his powers and imprisoned with magic to shelter and enrich Mysidia. The party weakened the spell, which releases the raging Leviathan. Clive then pacifies it, and Shula takes in Walgus to raise in her own. Overall, I think from what I've heard, it's not really that good of a Final Fantasy game. I mean, I have completed the main game, the main base game that is, but I have not touched the DLC for this, and I'm not sure if I'm going to. But from what I played, and this is just my own personal opinion, I didn't think it was too bad. I mean, obviously there's better Final Fantasy games out there, like Final Fantasy VII, like Final Fantasy IX, and actually Final Fantasy VII, I'm currently playing through that in its remake version that came out a few years ago, and that's a game that I do plan to cover on the show at some point. But yeah, like, it's not really that bad. I mean, and there is action combat in this game, like real-time combat that you do instead of turn-based combat from previous Final Fantasies. So definitely a bit of a change, but like they say, sometimes changes are good and sometimes they're not. But that's why we have opinions, and everybody's entitled to them. Alright, I think for this game, I'm going to grade this on a bit of the lower scale, 6.8 out of 10. I mean, it's not terrible, but it's also not that good. I mean, there's still some things that I think are holding this back, but that is just my opinion. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, so with that is going to conclude this week's episode of Video Game Reviews, and I will see you next time.